Hello, my name is Stuart. I am the unrepentant atheist, and this is my latest video, which is going to be on the subject of faith. So I've been watching the atheist experience for years. I've been watching debates and various videos. I've been listening to Christians talking about their faith and why their faith is better than a Muslim's faith, why their faith is reliable and other types of faith are not. And I thought I would just sort of see if I could put together some coherent thoughts about what actually faith is and why it seems to be difficult to convince Christians in particular, but Muslims too, that faith isn't reliable. So we've got to distinguish between different types of faith, and we've heard plenty of examples. Uh, you can have faith in something without it without it being any kind of religious thing. I could have faith that my car engine is going to start in the morning, and that's nothing like the kind of faith, religious faith. And obviously, why have I got this? Why have I got faith that my car is going to start in the morning? Because I've got evidence. I suppose it's a reliable car. It's started every time in the morning for the last 2 or 3 years, and I've got a fairly reasonable expectation that it's going to start. I know that there's fuel in the car, it's been serviced, etc. So I've got a reasonable expectation, or faith, if you like, that the car is going to start. So let's forget about that. That's a fairly mundane type of faith, and it's far more evidential than the kind of religious faith that Christians and Muslims, various other religions, defer to. So what does a theist, what does a Christian mean when they say, "I've got faith in God," or "I've got my Christian faith"? What actually is Christian faith? What is meant by this? And I think probably what it means is a very strong conviction that something uh, which is beyond any kind of proof is actually true. Something which is lacking in evidence, which could be whose truth could be demonstrated through evidence, is true. I don't really I don't really see how it could be anything else. And I've heard it said by some Christians with faith that uh, faith comes to you. So you don't you don't sort of choose the you don't sort of choose the faith. Faith comes to you. I wonder what they mean by that. Um, but just thinking about this whole faith thing in religion, what what is going to bring about a state of faith? In other words, a conviction that something for which is lacking in evidence is actually true. And I can only imagine that it must come from uh, either a personal experience or perhaps a reading of the Bible, which convinces the believer that the religion is true. Um, a certain awe, a feeling of awe about the nature of the universe. Um, uh, I can't really, I can't really quite articulate because I've never had religious faith. Really, I know that in my childhood, I kind of believed, but I haven't got. I'm struggling. I'm struggling really to account for it and to explain what it is because um, I've never had it. So, and I don't really see any reason for it. But that's not really the purpose of this video. So, what I'm responding to really are Christians who are commenting or coming onto the atheist experience, and they are saying that their faith um, is credible. In other words, um, you can say to them, do you care if your beliefs are true? And they'll say, well, yes, I do care. And then you say to them, and you've got faith in God. You've got faith that God exists or that Christianity is true. And they say, yes. And then you say to them, but is faith a good pathway to the truth? And I've heard some funny answers to this question. And I think one person who called into the Atheist Experience said, in some cases, yes, and in other cases, no. And the question then was, well, what do you mean by that? He says, well, Christianity is the only credible religion because there's a savior, and I've got faith in Jesus Christ as my savior. And in this case, faith is reliable. But Islam hasn't got the same thing, and Islamic faith is unreliable. So, and you can point out that you've spoken to Muslims who have also got faith in their religion. And how do we decide which one is true? Because a Muslim will present arguments why their faith is the true one. For example, we know that Muhammad, for example, wrote down the Quran. In many respects, we probably know more about Islam than we do about Christianity. It's a more recent religion, etc. They will present various arguments why Islamic faith is the correct faith and Christian faith isn't. And if you say to a Christian, well, how can you say that faith is reliable if two different people have got faith, claiming that they've got reliability on the faith and that their faith is reliable, but that the two beliefs cancel each other out, that they're believing contradictory things, and yet they're claiming that their faith is a pathway to truth. And this is a point where a Christian will often then retreat to the last resort, which is to explain that they had a personal experience, and that's how they know that their faith is reliable. And of course, there's nothing really much that can be said about that, except that I can say that I spoke to a Muslim last week, and he said exactly the same thing. He said he had a personal experience, a mind-blowing spiritual personal experience, in which he discovered that Islam is the true religion. And the Christians are saying exactly the same thing. Well, of course, they can't both be right, but they could both be wrong. So this thing where Christians are saying, or Muslims are saying, well, faith is a reliable pathway to truth. And then you say, yes, but there are many people who've got strong faith in contradictory positions. So how can it be? One cancels the other out. They can't all be true. And at this point, the conversation usually breaks down because no religious person who has invested a lot of time and energy in a religion and has got a faith is going to admit that faith is not a reliable pathway to truth. Very few actually have. One or two on the Atheist Experience call-in show, in the end, when pushed into a corner, have said, yes, they've conceded. Okay, faith isn't much better than a coin toss, if better at all. But I think probably what they believe is that their faith, a lot of them will say, well, yes, I've got faith, but not just faith, because my faith is backed up by evidence. And then, of course, you say, well, what evidence? And then they start going through the whole thing. Look at the birds, look at the trees, look at the Bible, etc., etc., etc. This is their evidence, or they prayed and they got better, or any one of these things. And of course, If you've got evidence, you don't need faith. Yeah? If you've got evidence, you don't need faith. And the truth is, the reason they need faith is because they haven't got evidence. They think it's evidence, but it isn't. Maybe deep down they know that it's not evidence, and that's why they've got faith. So if faith was so powerful and strong and reliable, they wouldn't be searching around for evidence. They wouldn't be searching around and using fallacious reasoning and resorting to, I prayed and my uncle got better, or any one of a number of easily debunkable so-called events or evidences. They wouldn't be resorting to such poor quality evidence, and it's not evidence at all. So they're relying on this faith, this conviction that something is true. And why? Either through a personal experience that they've had, this amazing sort of feeling of joy and awe that we all get at some time or other. It's just that not all of us will refer it to religion. Some of us will just accept it, accept the amazing feelings that we get about the incredible universe that we live in, and just leave it at that, because why make a connection between that and the existence of a God? It's no proof. And yet they're using these experiences to justify their faith. I've not really heard of many Christians who've said they've got faith really without saying they've got personal experience. I've not really come across any who've said they've got faith because of philosophical reasoning or study that they've done or anything like that, or because they believe in intelligent design, or Noah's Ark has been discovered, or anything of that type. It's nearly always through this kind of personal experience, or it might be something sublime in the Bible that they've read, which really impressed them. In the same way that I could find a quotation in Tolstoy that would impress me, but that wouldn't turn me into a believer. But because it's in the Bible, and the Bible is supposed to be inspired by God, obviously they read a passage in the Bible, it impresses them, it gives them this amazing feeling, and they conclude from that there is a God, and that's their faith. It's not logical, it's not rational. They've got no rational basis for making that connection, that because they had this amazing feeling that it somehow justifies a conviction that there is actually a God. And not only that, but that it's the Christian God. So obviously faith is not reliable, because as Matt has said, you could take any position on faith. You could have faith in absolutely any position, because faith doesn't require evidence. Of course, evidence could debunk a faith-based position. So you could have faith, for example, in, what shall we say? You could have faith in trans women athletes having an unfair advantage over women who were born female. You could have faith in that position, but it can be debunked by the scientific evidence. So it's falsifiable. So if you're going to take a faith-based position, it's probably best to take one that can't be falsified. And that's why I suppose that religious people resort to faith, because without this, what shall I say, excuse for believing without evidence, they haven't got religion. They've got nothing. They've got nothing to base their religion on. It's almost like a sort of magic pill, this faith thing. You know, you say, why do you accept Christianity? Well, I've got faith. It's like this magic. I don't know, lucky rabbit's foot they've got, or something like that, which somehow justifies accepting a position which really has got no proper justification. By proper justification, I mean a position on the state of reality which is evident from the bulk of quality evidence backing it up. And they haven't got that. So I think what I object to about appeals to faith is not faith as such, but special pleading. When you plead that your faith is better than another faith, that's what really not really annoys me, but it makes me realize that the people who've got faith-based positions haven't really thought about what faith is, how unreliable it actually is, and that it isn't a pathway to truth. And that if you can say that sometimes yes and sometimes no, it's like we've got two horses running in a race. We're going to use a coin to decide which one is going to win the race. We're going to place a bet. And you toss the coin. And if it comes down heads, you're going to back the black horse. And if it comes down tails, you're going to back the white horse. It comes down head, you back the black horse. And 50% of the time only will it be correct. And then you say, is that a reliable way to select the winner? And the obvious answer is no, it's not a reliable way to select the winner, any more than faith is a way to determine the truth of reality. Well, I don't really know how else I can put it. And I would like to get some reactions to anybody who's got faith to explain why you think that your faith is a good means to determine the truth of reality, because I don't get it. Anyway, that's all for now. Hope you enjoyed that. Leave some comments and subscribe to my channel if you want more content, and look forward to talking to you again soon.